Hi, Mark's at the Crocker Farm Auction. We've got a wonderful sale planned for you running from the 20th of May to the 29th of May with a phone bid session for lots bringing $5,000 or more on the 30th. This sale is going to cover the life's work, if you will, of David and Jongy Ward. They've been collectors since before I was born. I've been buying for roughly 50 years, and what they have amassed in Southern pottery is truly remarkable. Headlining this sale is this wonderful face pitcher made in Edgefield, South Carolina, one of the very best examples of an Edgefield face vessel in existence. Really fabulous, expressive face, wonderful condition, and this pitcher form is exceptionally rare as well. You can see the kaolin application for the eyes and the teeth. Teeth have this very deep carving. You see the nose here with these formed nostrils. Nice potting the pitcher. If you look at it in profile, you can see we have these tooled lines here. And they've ribbed this area a little bit, or maybe formed that with their thumbs, so it's slightly recessed right there. We have the tragus in each ear, typical of most Edgefield face vessels known. Beautiful glaze, excellent luster to the glaze, and it has that desirable greenish coloration associated with Edgefield pottery, as well as a little bit of iron flecking throughout. One thing I note in the catalog, you can see on the inside how this piece was formed. And since most of these face vessels are jugs, this really gives us an interesting opportunity to see the manipulation of the interior wall of the vessel. You can see right here where they've pushed in on the leather hard pot to create depressions for the eyes. We can see further down in there, there's actually a wide depression for applying the mouth. You can also see there's some depressions on the sides where the ears were placed as well. This piece famously sold in the John Gordon sale. That was one of the very best sales of American folk art ever held, but it was really also one of the very best sales of American pottery ever held. And it was 1999 at Christie's. And one of the very fascinating things about Gordon's acquisition of these face jugs is that he purchased them from Helen Eve, who was actually the daughter of Thomas Davies. You can see these old Christie stickers on the bottom, as well as some earlier notation. And, you know, these could be from Helen Eve, possibly, when she acquired these in the early 20th century. But Helen Eve was the daughter of Thomas Davies, who owned the Palmetto Firebrick Works in Bath, South Carolina. And it's Davies' correspondence with Edwin Atlee Barber for his early book on American pottery that serves as our basis for what we know about Edgefield face vessels. It's assumed that they actually were made at his pottery as well, although it's difficult to fully lock down attributions to Davies' site. But it's very interesting when we think about collecting, the collecting of Americana. You have this figure who's actually the daughter of a potter whose slaves and workers actually allegedly produced Edgefield face vessels, and she was so captivated with that form that she started collecting herself very, very early on, sometime in the first decade or so of the 20th century. Barber would end up with some of these as well in the late 19th or early 20th century, and one or more of those can be seen at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. But a really fabulous example. It really is hard to express the importance of this object. There's only about 200 or so documented Edgefield face vessels known, and this is in the very top tier of those, and you can certainly see why. It really is a 10 on all levels. You can even see down here we have this nicely applied chin or goatee below the mouth. Also offered from the Ward collection and acquired at the John Gordon sale is this beautiful example of a Miles Mill face jug. We can see that reddish brown alkaline glaze with some really strong olive modeling throughout. This indentation is glazed over and as made on the ear. We can see where the potter actually grabbed the piece here and dunked it in its glaze. Classic Miles Mill construction with this somewhat flattened broad spout. Again, the kaolin eyes and teeth. This piece actually still retains its original tag from the Gordon sale. We can see 19th January 99. And when David purchased this lot number 1, this face pitcher, at the Gordon sale, he paid a strong price for it in its day. And I asked him when we acquired the collection, I said, well, why did you go for this face pitcher? What about it? He said, because it was the best. And we really feel that way. And after he bought that, he told the lady on the phone, as he put it, in his way of talking, I have more butter and egg money. And so he smartly purchased this as well, which is a very nice addition to his collection. And the provenance from Gordon and also from Helen Eve, the daughter of Thomas Davies, really adds to the importance of this object. We have a nice selection of slip decorated pottery, primarily by Thomas Chandler, as well as some examples from the Colin Rhodes pottery. This is a fabulous example that we actually sold back in 2008. This was found in a sort of a junk shop or a consignment shop down south originally. We sold this as one of the first great examples of Southern pottery, all the way when we were back up at the York Fairgrounds with our auctions. You can see the mark here, Chandler Maker. Has this beautiful celadon colored alkaline glaze. And then the front is inscribed in iron slip, warranted good. And this can actually be traced to an advertisement that Thomas Chandler placed in the local paper saying that his pottery was warranted to be good. So it was warranted to last, warranted to be strong enough to fulfill the duties of household or farm use. And this example certainly has. Survives in essentially mint condition, really remarkable piece. Not only is the inscription exceptionally rare, but this half-gallon size is very rare as well. This is one of the best examples bearing that warranted good inscription known. Attesting to its rarity, we've only sold one other warranted inscribed piece, and that was a piece that was simply inscribed warranted. It did not have warranted good below it, and I believe the handle was restored. That was several years ago. But other than that, this piece, which is happily returned to our auction after nearly 20 years, is the only other. One of the best Chandler pitchers known will be crossing the block. This is a fabulous attributed Thomas Chandler pitcher with dramatic potting and decoration. You can see it has this great swollen belly, a footed base, and then this really nicely flaring collar with squared rim molding. The decoration, of course, is applied in iron slip over an alkaline glazed ground. These treatments were applied actually before the alkaline glaze, but it shows through after the firing has occurred. Really strong contrast, really beautiful color. You can see all these kind of federal style drape motifs, and this addition of a third line in here is very unusual. You can see 1, 2, 3. A lot of times you'll see 1, sometimes 2. This third line here is a really nice special treatment. And then really rigorous looping around the collar. Beautiful piece. And again, it speaks to the quality that the Wards really saw in the pieces that they've purchased. This little jug is David's favorite piece. This is possibly the smallest slip decorated jug known by Thomas Chandler. Highly unusual notation. This is the only example we've seen with this kind of notation. This 1/4 slashes, presumably meaning 1 quart or 1/4. Within a medallion done in kaolin slip, very classic Chandler treatment. Unusual kaolin slip application here at the upper handle terminal. Sweet little size. David originally saw this in Ralph McClendon Sr.'s collection. He was actually going over to see the Pottersville Museum. He viewed the museum, talked to Ralph. Ralph brought this piece out of his house because he didn't want it to get stolen. He was worried if he put it in his museum, it might get snatched due to its small size, I suppose. David was really taken with it. And in my conversation with him, he said he really thought he'd never get a chance to own the piece. Well, Ralph's collection ended up at Harmer Rook Galleries in New York some years later, and David acquired it there sometime in the early 90s, I believe. So here's the exhibit book that went along with Hear Me Now, the traveling exhibit that started at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 2022. And I wanted to show you this. In here on the inside title page is actually David and Jongy's beloved jug. But really beautiful piece, excellent condition, exceptional size. And that's one thing I want to emphasize about David and Jongy's collection is you're going to see a lot of things that are not only beautiful, and there's not only an emphasis on good slip decoration, but the condition of these things is really remarkable. Southern material, of course, is so difficult to find in good condition. And so they were very selective with what they bought. And most of what you're going to see in this sale is in great shape. Here's a really nice open handle jar or stew pot. This vertical handle application is quite rare for Chandler. And again, we have iron slip loops against an alkaline glazed ground. This piece has a great story. This was actually acquired by David and Jongy in the early 2000s. They went to view some antiques in a cabin in North Carolina, and Jongy said to David, well, what about that bowl on the ground? He said, what do you mean? And he said, that dog bowl over there. This was actually being used as a dog bowl up until about 20 years ago or so. You see it has this beautiful blue glaze on the interior with iron slip decoration, highly unusual open-centered flowers, almost like the bullseye kind of pattern, and this strong daisy motif on the interior, which connects this piece to Thomas Chandler's training in Baltimore. This was made actually at the Trapp and Chandler Pottery about 1848 to 1850. You can see these nice blue runs here at the shoulder. And because David and Jongy are honest people and good collectors, they paid the woman a great price for it. And one of the reasons why they did that is because they said they want to be able to tell the story. And it is a great story that this stuff is still coming out. You can see the kind of very pale greenish ground here with nice blue runs at the shoulder as well. So rare form, wonderful decoration. As I said, great story. Moving along, an example of Colin Rhodes pottery made on Shaw's Creek. Great half-gallon size, wonderful condition, olive glazed ground with these strong, very tactile and raised kaolin slip foliate motifs on the side, and a half within a medallion at the shoulder. Wonderful piece. David acquired this from a Horn descendant from the Horn and DeVore potters at Kirksey's Crossroads. This was given as a wedding gift in the Horn and DeVore family back during the fourth quarter of the 19th century. And it has a very nice provenance. It's actually mentioned in the catalog. These ring jugs are a form you primarily see produced in the American South if you find them anywhere. But those from Edgefield are very rare. There's not many known at all. In this example, we can actually link to this specific potting duo that were involved at J.P. Bodie's pottery on Kirksey's Crossroads. Another great half-gallon Colin Rhodes jug. You can see in this case, we have a little bit of a difference. Instead of decoration on the sides, decoration primarily extends up the front. It forms a full flower with leaves, nice scalping to the petals here, and a half within the blossom. So characteristic of Rhodes stoneware. Again, wonderful condition. This is one of the rarest examples that we'll be offering. Very excited to offer this signed Isaac Durham jar. We have this mark ID. Isaac Durham is probably one of the most influential Edgefield potters that we see an extremely limited number of signed material from. And so for new collectors, it's not a name that's gonna jump out at you. Unfortunately, potters that didn't sign their ware are somewhat lost to history. We don't really know exactly what they made. Isaac Durham was actually the father-in-law of Thomas Chandler. He worked with him at Phoenix Factory. He was involved at Pottersville. According to Phil Wingard's Swag and Tassel, Durham also probably worked at the Martintown Road Pottery with his son-in-law. And so he was involved at several different sites, but a paucity of signed ware has really limited what we can understand about this man. You can see even at the shoulder, there's little tiny traces of actual root heel, which is rare among Edgefield pottery. We can see some down here too. This is the first example that we've offered bearing Durham's stamp, but it's actually the only example that I can find in documentation that has a full double initialed stamped I and D. And David bought this at a small house sale many years ago in his neck of the woods. So exciting example, probably made between the 1820s and 1840s, possibly Pottersville. Another great open-handled jar, Edgefield District, South Carolina, great size. You can see just how small it is. Nice vertical handle construction. Moving along, a later example. This is kind of the swan song of production for Edgefield Pottery. This is made at the Bainham site. An exceptionally rare SC dispensary jug. You can see that stamp there with this palmetto tree above. This was made for the South Carolina dispensary system during the late 19th century. And that dispensary system actually only lasted until the early 20th century. Sometimes you'll see some glass bottles, and occasionally you'll find a blue and white piece of stoneware. In this case, we have the alkaline glaze done in the classic Edgefield tradition. This shoulder form relates to late pottery, but the South Carolina dispensary system, which required South Carolina citizens to buy their alcohol directly from a dispensary in South Carolina, as you can imagine, did not last very long at all. And so these are quite rare. They're even tougher to find in great condition like this. Sometimes you'll see them with restored handles and that sort of thing. So again, typifying the Ward's focus on condition. Couple great small size pitchers from Edgefield. This example you see here on the right is actually from the Ralph McLennan collection and was previously on display at the Pottersville Museum. You can see that Harmer Rook Gallery sticker on the underside from when it sold back in the early 90s at the sale of the Pottersville Museum collection in New York City. It's a beautiful example of a Chandler pitcher. Bold iron slip decoration. You can see the iron took really pleasingly in the firing, and so we have this darker brown and this reddish brown mixed through it. Nice gray-green alkaline glazed ground. You can see typical of his potting, we have this nice thin construction. Chandler was really a master of both potting and decorating, and so most of these pieces you're going to see in this sale, as is the case with Chandler's work, is very delicate in construction, not much clay wasted. It's a beautiful clabber bowl attributed to Thomas Chandler. Again, wonderful condition. As with that slip decorated bowl I showed you a little bit ago, we have this kind of very pale gray-green ground on the exterior with some bluish runs, and then the interior really more of a bluish color. Some heavier application here on the shoulder. David and Jongy were also interested in upstate South Carolina pottery, and they were from Greenville, and so there's a lot of upstate South Carolina pottery offered in this sale. One of the best examples is this Spartan C. Dixon jug. Exceptionally rare. There's not many of these out there, and David did his own original research on this potter and found out that he was actually a troubled man, possibly schizophrenic, but was actually sadly institutionalized a couple times. But David's research was never published, but it really speaks to the scholar that he was about locally produced stoneware. It wasn't just about finding an artistic object, it was about uncovering the history of the people that made them. So nice runny alkaline glaze here, late 19th century. First S.C. Dixon piece we've ever had. That's a really tough mark to find. Made a little bit earlier, this is a Thomas Owenby jug, really closely relates in style to the iconic Confederate SIC jug that we sold in the Waller collection. This example is much smaller, and the size is very difficult to find. And that's made in the Union District. Here's a vase which very well could be Rich Williams. Rich Williams was an African-American potter, and the documentation of him in his shop is the only visual documentation we have of an African-American potter at work in the 19th or early 20th century at one of the old-fashioned potteries. And so, yeah, very cool piece. This is a vase, which is exceptionally rare. This is actually the only example of this form that I've seen in upstate South Carolina production. You can see has these nice open handles, also very rare. You're not going to see that typically. But the red clay and the color, aspects of the color of the glaze really suggest Rich Williams. If not Rich Williams, definitely upstate South Carolina. Here's an example of Rich's work. Bearing the stamp Rich Williams, 2 different stamps used at the base for each name. Dark colored alkaline glaze, very distinctive stepped rim. If you are going to find a signed example of Rich, well, we're losing the tag here. If you are going to find an example of Rich Williams pottery, it's probably going to be one of these canning jars. We sold a few over the years, and this is actually one that David acquired from our auction. 2 rare miniatures. This is almost certainly a Rich Williams piece based on the color of the clay and the color of the glaze. You can see how closely it relates to this jar here. Typical upstate South Carolina form, the way it tapers. You'll see Welchel things also tapering like this, or you'll see a Parker jug sometimes shaped like this as well. Interesting handle construction, this broad flat handle right here. And here's a piece that closely relates in style probably by the same hand and possibly Rich Williams. Two very rare jars, and I really want to talk about these because they not only are highly unusual examples of upstate South Carolina stoneware, but these are two of the pieces that got David and Jongy started. They actually found these in their attic after they bought their house, and they were wondering what they were, and they found out that they were local pottery. And so these were not only pieces that started it all, so to speak, but they're also pieces that haven't been on the market since they were used in their famous house, which was actually built in the mid-1830s in Greenville. And so it's really cool to put these things back on the market after, I don't know, 130 years or so. You can see the base actually has this stamp here, JHG for John Gilreath, and he potted Spartanburg. Glaze is closely related to Rich Williams, as you can see. Nice thin wall construction, competent potting. But Gilreath's pieces are exceptionally rare. You just don't see these coming on the market. These are the first two that we've had. It's actually two separate lots, but it's very interesting that these two were found in the original household that they were used in. Very cool. Moving along, some other pottery from Edgefield and North Carolina. Some other Edgefield pieces here. This is a nice grouping of Miles Mill jugs. You can see, if you have any doubt, there's lots of questions about where lots of the different face vessels in Edgefield are made, but we have no doubt about these ones based on the way the spouts look. So you can see that it's a great go with these jugs. That smallest size, according to David, is exceptionally rare. This is the only one he's seen in this size. But this is a really nice lot, and it's a rare opportunity to own a graduated set of these jugs produced during the final quarter of the 19th century. And he actually purchased one of these. Again, David was about studying these things too, and so he really felt like the spout on these jugs paralleled the spout you're going to see on glass apothecary bottles of the 19th century. Another upstate piece. This is a wonderful picture. Not only is it a scarce form for the Welchel pottery, but it actually has two-color slip decoration. And sometimes you'll see two-color slip. It's a rare treatment for them, but this is the first one we've seen incorporating green. So it's really cool. This olive green wreath surrounding this reddish-brown iron slip daisy. Really nice condition. A lot of Welchel stuff you'll find in damaged condition. This is really in beautiful condition. Moving along, a fabulous Texas ring jug. And going back to Isaac Durham, his son Marion Durham, and a figure named John Chandler, who was possibly a previously enslaved potter under Thomas Chandler, traveled out to Texas and ended up working at some sites. And they possibly have some influence on this, the construction of this, and bringing the Edgefield style to Texas. This piece was made at the Jefferson S. Nash Pottery, and we know this because we actually sold a signed example that was closely related many years ago. An associate of Jefferson Nash was named Milligan Frazier. He was an African American, and there's different theories about Frazier's association with Nash. It's widely accepted that he worked at Nash's pottery, but he was very young at the time. He would have been shortly preteen or into his early teens. And so it's possible that as a teenager he made this, but what might be more likely is this was made at Milligan's own pottery, which is documented. And he established his own pottery in the latter 19th century at a site near Nash's pottery. And so he probably was taking Nash's glazes, and this very well could also be, even though we attribute it to Nash, it could be a slightly later piece that was made by Frazier on his own at his own shop in the Nash style. But the glaze certainly follows what people associate with Frazier. There's a wonderful article from the 1970s where Fraser's son actually discusses the pottery his father made, talked about getting Coke bottles and other glass and grinding them up and applying them to the pots. And that's what we see here, this wonderful glass application. Really striking contrast against this reddish brown alkaline glazed ground. Beautiful form. There's a fair bit of workmanship involved in these ring bottles. You had to throw this ring-shaped form on the wheel, seal it over so that it was actually hollow. In this case, it's actually fairly thick, so there's some skill there. But then you had to let that sit a little bit, throw a spout, cut a little hole right here in the top and apply the spout. Then you had to apply the handle, and in the case of this one also, you had to apply a foot. So there's really kind of 4 steps to the production of this thing, which attests to the craftsmanship involved, attests to the specialness of this form, if you will. So we're very excited to have this. This example is actually a little bit smaller than the other example we sold many years ago bearing a Nash Maker's mark, and so the petite size really benefits this piece artistically. It's really a wonderful object with a dynamic glaze. Moving on, another excellent small. This is a possibly unique object, a presentation jug made at the Weaverville Pottery in Buncombe County, North Carolina, bearing the inscription May Louise Matson, Weaverville Pottery, September 7th, 1904. This is 3 years before my grandfather was born. So you can it's interesting when you think about the continuity of this. This seems like ages ago, but in some ways it's connected to the modern times. But wonderful squat-shaped form. This is clearly made for this young girl, May Louise Matson. Classic Buncombe County glaze that you're going to find on a lot of pieces that were made a little bit earlier by the Stones and the Penlands. Extremely rare potter's signature here and date. And you're really not going to find many Buncombe County pieces at all that actually have freehand inscriptions like this. I mean, occasionally you'll see, of course, pieces bearing Stone or Penland marks, but something like this is really remarkable. One of the standouts in North Carolina from the Ward collection. Another piece, you'll see some things mixed in here that don't really fit entirely with the Edgefield or utilitarian pottery aesthetic, but their pieces have nonetheless caught David and Jongy's eye. This is a wonderful George Orr teapot. You can see the maker's mark on the underside, George E. Orr, Biloxi, Mississippi. This was made in the late 19th century. As is typical of Orr's better work, we have this manipulation, this kind of brutalist treatment of the pot where he has depressed it and twisted it a little bit. And we have this nice wave-like pattern formed around here. You can see just how thin this piece is at the rim. And that's really one of the main things that Orr is known for, is just how thin his pots were. Nice gooseneck spout, an iron-based glaze, and it retains its original recessed lid, which is a nice addition, also bearing the mark of George Orr on the underside. It's a great piece of Southern pottery, a different aesthetic, of course. It's done in the art pottery, part of the art pottery movement, but goes well with this Edgefield pottery as well. A couple other spouted vessels, a rare example of North Carolina alkaline glazed ware in the form of a teapot, made sometime in the second half of the 19th century. Then a nice Crawford County, Georgia coffee pot. Very cool. A couple miniatures here, a few miniatures attributed to Polycarp Hartsoe, North Carolina origin. Mix of other pots from the south down there. Moving along, a great North Carolina face jug made by Harvey Reinhardt in Vail, North Carolina. Famous potter Berlin Craig got his start at Reinhardt's shop. Really wonderful face, bulging eyes, done in kaolin, brown pupils, nice handlebar mustache, china plate teeth, beautiful high gloss alkaline glaze, and we see Reinhardt's mark right here, H.F. Reinhardt, Vale, North Carolina. And this was made sometime during the second quarter of the 20th century. These are very tough to find. I believe we've only sold 2 other examples over the years. This was acquired by David and Jongy at Garth's many, many years ago. Immaculate condition as well. Nice example of brown pottery from Arden, North Carolina, dating to about 1930. China plate teeth, Albany slip type glaze. And we see that characteristic small size brown pottery maker's mark along with the number 47 on the underside. Very nice example. A couple pieces of Reinhardt swirlware. Beautiful selection of Chinese blue glazed Jugtown pottery. And these 2 vases are great. They're selling in separate lots but could make a very nice pair, obviously. We have the early Jugtown ware mark dating sometime 1920, 1930 time period. Beautiful turquoise to red glaze, open handle construction. The Chinese blue glaze is the premier glaze from this site. It is still being produced today by descendants. You can see on the inside, we actually have a much more typical Albany slip that you associate with kind of utilitarian pieces, but these are very high styled, beautiful pieces. And you can see that gray clay on the underside that, again, is more commonly associated with utilitarian pottery. But these are great large size vases. You don't find many of this size very often. Some nice smaller vases as well from Jugtown. And then we have some more swirlware from Reinhardt. Moving along, some more North Carolina art pottery. Here's another example where the words broaden their horizons a bit, and they purchased this handsome Lyman Fenton and Company, Bennington, Vermont, flint enamel lion. Let's flip it around here, get the mark. Really cool maker's mark. You can see here it actually notes that this specific glaze was patented in 1849. Dates this piece about 1850. Beautiful glaze, very sophisticated, one of the more sophisticated glaze treatments you're going to find in American pottery of the time period. Coleslaw application to the mane and legs, similar to what the Bells were trying to do, possibly copying something like this down in Winchester and Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. You can see it has a really wonderful facial expression with that lolling tongue, and it survives in nice condition with chip here to one tooth, and that might be all that's wrong with it. Another piece of art pottery. This is an Overbeck pottery wizard vase. The Overbeck sisters pottery, of course, would bear this mark on the underside, OBK, and this also bears the initials EF as well for one of the sisters. Beautiful green glaze and dramatic relief decoration with this cream ground contrasting starkly against it. Nice example. Their work is highly coveted in art pottery circles, and it doesn't come up for auction very often. Going back a few centuries, we have these nice Bellarmine jugs sold as a single lot. Of course, all of them feature that angered bearded man or Bart man at the shoulder and seals at the midsection. These were made in Germany. And all of them also feature a salt glaze with a dipped iron treatment underneath. Nice little grouping. One last piece from the case I want to highlight is this Southern Porcelain Company pitcher. Just some of the most high-styled pottery you're going to find produced in the American South in the 19th century. This closely related to ironstone or Parian ware. You'll see it from the 19th century, from England or from Bennington, Vermont. One of the characteristic patterns from this pottery is the corn pattern. And it really contrasts sharply with what you're going to see produced in South Carolina during the time period. Of course, you're going to mostly see the alkaline glazed stoneware. And then we have this come along. So this is really an example of potters coming to the South and trying to make something that was more than just a utilitarian piece, but was something that was more of a decorative tableware. Not many examples of this type of pottery exist by this maker. There's a handful of pieces at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and occasionally it comes up for auction, but really beautiful example in excellent condition. Moving over to the stands, have a very nice large-sized Chandler maker. This is a really big one. This is maybe 8 gallons, 10 gallons, somewhere in there. Again, as I showed you the pieces in the cases, we're seeing a theme here, these drapes and these loops. Very, very typical of Chandler's decorative vocabulary. These are done in kaolin slip, a nice greenish ground. His forms closely relate to the jars that you're going to see produced in Baltimore, Maryland from the 18 teens until about 1830. And that's because he apprenticed in Baltimore. And so you're going to see these kind of semi-rounded rims. You're going to see these flattened handles that are almost like big tabs applied. Beautiful piece. The esteemed David Drake might call this a great noble jar because of its size. It is a really majestic piece. And you can see at the shoulder, the Chandler maker's mark, made about 1850 at Kirksey's Crossroads. Moving along, we have a very nice example of Colin Rhodes pottery. I showed you a couple half-gallon jugs earlier. This is a much larger example. We can see this is executed in kaolin slip, and it's slip trailed using a slip cup, the same way that a Pennsylvania German redware potter would decorate a plate, or a Northeastern American stoneware potter would decorate a jar in cobalt. The back, however, features a different color, front being kaolin slip, the back being brushed. It's a different application too as well. The back features this brushed iron slip. Beautiful green alkaline glazed ground, some nice reddish brown coloration on the reverse, and some appealing runs here as well. Beautiful decoration and beautiful condition. Again, quality and condition are two hallmarks of what the Wards put together. Another nice piece of Chandler pottery, bearing Chandler maker's mark. A C here on the front in iron slip. In the past, these were thought to be 6s. A lot of people agree that this is a C for Chandler. Drape decoration and looping line decoration on the front and reverse and below each handles. Desirable size. Nice grayish green alkaline glazed ground. And this, like the jar I showed you a bit ago, was made at Kirksey's Crossroads about 1850. One of the best examples of Chandler stoneware we've ever had is this double-handled jug. And you can see why. Very stately piece, beautiful potting. I talked earlier about the fineness of Chandler potting, and this piece really exemplifies that. Desirable double-handled construction. Jugs of this size were given 2 handles to make them easier to carry, but it's a very desirable form. You don't see all that many double-handled jugs from Edgefield. Beautiful celadon ground. An outstanding kaolin slip decoration, applied with a slip cup of 5, denoting 5 gallons within a flower blossom, These motifs, of course, as you saw earlier, were used by both Chandler and at the Colin Rhodes pottery. The front features a really outstanding floral decoration, which is unusual for Chandler. The way that these leaves are executed, these flowers are executed and these leaves are executed, it's a little more artistic and different than what you typically see from Chandler. Chandler, of course, we typically see something like a flower blossom around a number, or drapes, or looping lines around the shoulder. So to have this vertical flowering plant motif is more unusual. Again, Chandler maker's mark here at the shoulder, made about 1850 at Kirksey's Crossroads. Beautiful condition. Both handles are original. There's some nice ribbing to the handles as well. Some heavier glaze application here at the shoulder. But a piece that combines form, decoration, size, and maker. So there's a lot of different things going on here with this piece. Really outstanding example, and definitely one of the headliners of the Ward's collection. Another Chandler jug. This one has a large flower blossom on the front. The rare addition of the date 1852 makes this a special example. The gray-green alkaline glazed ground. Beautiful potting. Some heavier glaze application here. You see descending from the handle and around the midsection. Great example of Chandler's work. There's not many dated examples known, so this is definitely a standout. This right here is one of the best Chandler Kate Crocks known. And this has publication history as well. I believe it's in Wingard's Swag and Tassel, as well as Hewitt's Great Pots. Very high fired, very beautiful lustrous glaze. You can hear how that thing rings. Wonderful example. Bold iron slip throughout, very crisply applied, very strong execution of the decoration. Again, these tab-like handles, which are associated with Chandler's Baltimore training. And then a very rare addition to this piece is the maker's mark on the interior base. You don't see that very often. And this one is also a rare mark variant. It just simply says Chandler. So a beautiful piece, great condition. As I said, one of the best Chandler butter pots, Kate Crocks in existence. This is one of the standouts of the auction, and you can see why. It's a really beautiful piece. Even somebody who was completely unfamiliar with American pottery would recognize the significance of this object because of how beautiful it is. It's this wonderful two-color slip tulip motif. You can see here, brushed iron slip, detailed with slip-trailed kaolin slip, looping lines here, dashes along the leaves, and then the blossom has this wonderful detail throughout. This was made at the Colin Rhodes pottery. So it showed you the two half-gallon jugs earlier and the larger jug with a nice floral motif earlier, but they all pale in comparison to this. This is a true masterwork. We have the double-handled construction that's so desirable. We have the elaborate two-color slip floral decoration on the front, and then the back is truly remarkable. We have this incised motif filled in iron slip, a very rare treatment to have incising detailing the design. Culminating in capacity designation on the piece. It looks like they started to write 3 and then changed it to 4. But then what really makes this piece all the more important is this inscription right here, C. Rhodes Maker. A freehand incised inscription. So very rare form of signature. Occasionally you'll find slip-trailed signatures done by the Colin Rhodes pottery, but to have one that was actually done, carved into the clay, is remarkable. This piece, again, like with the Chandler jug, we have decoration, form, maker, even condition. I mean, a lot of these you'll see with significant restoration to the spout or missing a handle or something like that. This has some restoration to the spout, and that's it. And it's largely in excellent condition. We're very excited to have this piece. It represents a rare opportunity, and it is one of the best examples of Rhodes work ever to come to auction. There's a lot of different factors that come into play for this piece, and it kind of is a perfect storm of pieces, if you will, capturing a lot of the different criteria that makes a piece a masterpiece. So very excited to have that in this sale. And that also has a publication history as well, a strong publication history. This is also in Swag and Tassel, and it's also in Mark Hewitt's Great Pots. A beautiful example of North Carolina stoneware is a Lincoln County jug with really bold glass runs coming off the handle. We actually have it displayed backwards because it's so striking. Rutile trim, that nice blue and white trim going around the edge. Bold form, highly ovoid, nice tooling around the spout related to Siegel pottery. But all around a beautiful example of what was being produced around the mid-19th century in North Carolina. This is one of the most strikingly glazed examples of alkaline glazed pottery that we've ever offered, and this was a piece that really stood out in David and Jongy Ward's collection when we picked it up. And David had a lot of strong things to say about it. I was really fascinated with this jug, the way that the glaze took on it. You can see it has a multicolored olive alkaline glaze, but coming throughout, decorating throughout the upper body area, we have this fabulous iron application, these runs, and they probably had iron cinders applied to it because you actually see a little trace of what appears to be one right there, and one on the back as well. But wonderful multicolored glaze. Even down here, oops, let me move this. Down at the bottom half, bottom 2/3, you can see it has this interesting matte greenish coloration as well. Beautiful potting, unusual short, broad spout with a single tooled accent here. Beautiful handles. A real work of art that captures the aesthetic of alkaline glazing. You see how gravity takes effect when this thing hits the firing and stuff starts melting. You see that one run goes all the way to the bottom, and we can see these other runs. Really beautiful piece, and I wanted to show this in Mark Hewitt's book, because Mark Hewitt has a lot to say about this jug. You see great pots from the traditions in North and South Carolina. Somewhere around 8 pieces of, it's a familiar face. There he is. There's that little jug again. But Mark Hewitt was captivated by this piece. And it's a mystery piece in that there's different theories about where it could have been made. Upstate South Carolina is an option. An early piece of Thomas Chandler pottery at Martintown Road is a possibility. Then you also have John D. Leopard, who produced things in Randolph County, Alabama, using this iron decoration, and also ended up traveling to Texas where it was also made. But let me show you these pictures. I believe Mark dedicates more pictures of this piece than anything, to this piece than anything in this book. And I note this in the catalog, and I'm going to read it here right now. No pot in this exhibition has brought me as much pleasure and consternation as this one. Pleasure because the wonderful, ethereal, dark red ochre bleeds that saturate the green ash glaze, perfectly enhancing the lovely shape and fine handles. Consternation because the question of attribution remains unsolved. 3 theories prevail. And one thing that he discusses that I'll read briefly is it was found in Spartanburg County, South Carolina, and had been owned by the same family since before the Civil War. It could therefore be from the hand of an unknown upstate potter. But then he also goes on to discuss whether it could be a Chandler piece or a leopard piece. Regardless of maker, it clearly has a strong Edgefield influence and is really a masterwork, not just in decoration, but in size and form and potting. A fabulous example of pottery that really has kind of a timeless, almost modern aesthetic to it. That pot would be at home in any collection, early American, folk art, or modern art collection. I wanted to show you this as well. This Phoenix Factory piece illustrated in swag and tassel. The exhibit at the McKissick Museum that Phil Wingard curated and wrote this exhibition catalog on. And you can see it's a great book if you're interested in Chandler stoneware. We have a lot of great examples here, and a lot of what David and Jongy own is also illustrated in here, but I just wanted to highlight this book as well as this piece. This is one of the standouts of David and Jongy's collection. This was purchased in the early 2000s. As David described it, it was the first Phoenix Factory he had seen available, and so he jumped at it and bought it. Phoenix Factory is one of the rare marks in not just Edgefield pottery, but in all of Southern pottery. Very rare mark, used about 1840. You can see it right here, Phoenix Factory, ED for Edgefield, and then SC, of course, for South Carolina. The form somewhat emulates Baltimore, and that may be because of Chandler's influence. Chandler worked there. Chandler's father-in-law, Isaac Durham, worked there. There's a number of different people involved. Robert Mathis worked there. It's a really important piece historically, but also a wonderful piece decoratively. You can see this striking brushed iron slip decoration on the reverse as well as the front. The back, possibly related to the Baltimore aesthetic of the clover, which was coming in around the mid-1820s when Chandler would have been there. And then the iron slip decoration on the front, very beautiful, kind of abstract floral motif forming a wreath around the maker's mark, which again, we would see that used a decade or so later in Chandler's other work. When he was slip trailing, he would put a slip trail daisy, as we saw earlier, around his pieces. It has an alkaline glazed ground, kind of a grayish olive ground, and the condition is immaculate. Really strong condition for such a piece. Minor flaws, you can see some hairlines here. Not many of these are known. I believe we've only sold one other example of Phoenix Factory, and that was maybe a couple years ago. So this is highly important historically to the production of Edgefield pottery. And it's also an exceptional piece decoratively speaking as well. Phoenix Factory is where these wonderful slip decorations got started, and it's what kind of brought forth this new decorative treatment that we would see on Edgefield pottery for the next decade or so. So honored to have that in this sale. Rounding out this collection, we have a wonderful selection of primarily Edgefield pottery. Some more great examples by Chandler and Colin Rhodes. Here's a beautiful Colin Rhodes jug. Crisp iron slip decoration. 3 deeply scored punctates for 3 gallons. Another great Chandler. It's a grayish ground with this kaolin slip drape motif. Here's a wonderful Columbia jug. This is in Mark Hewitt's Great Pots. Made at the Landrum Brick and Pottery in Columbia, South Carolina. Abner Landrum established a pottery there sometime in the 1830s. This piece was made a little bit later than that. Beautiful alkaline glaze with, I'm not sure if you can get this or not, but really interesting modeling. You can see that green to brown coloration. Nicely tooled spout as well. A very rare Edgefield jar by an unknown maker with elaborate incised banding. This is the only jar of this type that we've seen. You can see 4 vertical slashes at the base for 4 gallons. Above it we have what might be the best John Siegler jug from this period known. Glaze is really associated with the Landrum family. See that raised tactile application of glossy olive over a mottled grayish to red ground, and then the base bearing Siegler's mark, JWS & Co., Pine House, South Carolina, about 1860. Really dynamic glaze in excellent condition. Again, possibly the best JWS jug out there. Moving along, a rare J.P. Bodie maker jug, dated 1872. Inscribed 2 for 2 gallons. So much of what David and Jongy had are premier examples of what these potters produced. So most of what Siegler produced is fairly utilitarian, some nice glazes, but fairly utilitarian pieces. They chose one that has one of the most extraordinary glazes you'll see, and this is one of the most extraordinary glazed pieces of Bodie pottery that you'll see. Look at this wonderful blue run here. That, coupled with the date, makes this a really great example. We have a jug which is possibly by Harry. It has some of the traits that we associate with the potter Harry, the enslaved potter, working at Pottersville alongside Dave. Unusual spout construction, incised slash mark here, thick short handle, and this differs from what you'll see from a lot of pieces from Pottersville, and certainly it differs from Dave's work. Really beautiful glaze. You can see nice gloss, heavy application to the shoulder. A couple other Pottersville jugs, probably earlier. These exhibit the classic Pottersville glaze scheme of a light kind of cream green ground with heavy olive runs at the shoulder. I've actually got 4 of them in this sale. You can see this example has a A stamped at the base and really elaborate runs cascading down the body of the vessel. This example is in really nice condition, has a small V stamp at the base. This example has a larger V stamp right here. I believe this was stamped as well somewhere. Yeah, there we go, an A. It's got the A with the little right angle, kind of like the Comaraw's A from Manhattan. Moving along, a nice small BF Landrum jug made by the son of Reverend John Landrum in Horse Creek Valley. Same general area that Lewis Miles has his pottery that David Drake worked at. Very nice example of Siegler pottery, another jug, more cylindrical than the other one I showed you, but again, bearing that JWS Pine House mark at the base. Excellent condition. Some upstate pottery. Nice Pottersville piece with a C marking at the base. For you North Carolina collectors, a nice 1-gallon Daniel Siegel bearing that DS stamp and a 1. some more great Chandler pottery, including this extremely rare Chandler Warranted. If you watched the video from its beginning, you will have seen the Warranted Good iron slip inscribed piece. This is the only example that we've had bearing a warranted stamped mark for Chandler. This is a single lot right here. Two beautiful jugs that really, we thought, belong together. They're illustrated together in swag and tassel. This very high fired gray alkaline glazed jug with slip-trailed kaolin wreath at the shoulder, and then another one that has more of a light olive color with iron slip wreath. Both of somewhat unusual form, both same size, a really wonderful pair that showcase the different glaze treatments that Chandler was working with. Very nice Chandler jug, 2 gallon with wreath. The beautiful broken stem jar. This is Chandler as well, showing a motif that collectors refer to as the broken stem, because we have leaves on one side and leaves on the other. And then closing things out, two-handled jug, attributed to John Goodman, North Carolina. Desirable form, nice thin-walled construction, bearing a JG stamp. A rare southern pot with star mark at the shoulder. Really strong, reddish brown glazing. Some Buncombe County, actually one Buncombe County right here, Buncombe County pitcher with nice glaze, nice Edgefield pitcher, some upstate pieces. A small jug attributed to Amos Landrum at Shaw's Creek. This was before Phoenix Factory was established and has a variant of the Landrum cross here. And mix of other utilitarian pieces. We're very excited to have this sale. I want to thank the Wards for choosing us to sell this collection for them. It's been a joy to put together, and it's been a joy to go through David and Jongy's research and see where they bought all these things and what information they found. There's a note that I have in the catalog, which I think is true. David and Jongy really were consummate collectors, and they really personified what it is to be a good collector, to make great contacts, to buy condition and quality, and to never stop learning about pottery. So we're very excited to have this collection offered for you. If you have any questions, please contact us at 410-472-2016 or by email at info@crockerfarm.com to speak directly to a member of the Zip family. Thank you so much for joining us.